بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now in last week's lesson we looked at the first hadith of Mishkaat al-Masabi, and this hadith is a very famous hadith which we looked at, narrated by Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radhiyallahu anhu, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Innamal a'malu bin niyat," the actions are according to intentions. And I mentioned the reason or the wisdom why this hadith has been mentioned right at the beginning. The reason why is so that the students of the hadith or the audience, they can correct their intentions, that the reason why they are listening to this hadith, the reason why they are studying hadith, the reason why they are studying tafsir and Quran is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to acquire that knowledge and then teach it to others and make a positive change in the community and in the society. Because if the intention is not to please Allah, but if the intention is fame, if the intention is so that people can say that I've sat in a dars or in a lecture of hadith, or if the intention, say for example from the teacher's side or from the lecturer's side, is so that people can say that mashallah, he's a great lecturer, he's a great teacher. If your intention is that, then you are not going to get any reward and any thawab. So our purpose of coming to this particular gathering or coming for this particular dars and lecture is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also whatever we acquire, whatever we learn, we then make a firm intention that we're going to teach it to other brothers and sisters, and more importantly, we're going to make a positive change in the community and in our society. So that was the hadith which we read in last week's lesson. Now the first hadith which we're going to look at in today's lesson, or the first hadith of the next chapter, which the author has brought here, in Arabic is entitled as Kitabul Iman, which in English means the book or the chapter about beliefs and about Iman. Now what does Iman mean? Now Iman means literally to verify, at-tasdeeq, to verify, to believe. That's the literal definition of Iman. And technically Iman means to accept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, to accept and believe without any misgivings, without any doubts, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, and to believe, as we read in the other books, Iman-e-Mujmal, Iman-e-Mufassal, to believe in His angels, to believe in His books, to believe in the other messengers and prophets sent by Allah, to believe in fate, taqdeer, and to believe in life after death. So in a nutshell, that's what Iman is technically. That to have belief in those 5 or 6 things which are mentioned, that is Iman. If, say for example, somebody believes in the oneness of Allah but doesn't believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that person isn't a believer in the true sense of the word. Because you will find many Christians, many Jews who believe in the oneness of Allah. They believe that there is one God. But because they don't believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they don't believe, say for example, in the other books of Allah, they don't believe in the other messengers of Allah, just by having belief in the oneness of Allah doesn't mean that you'll be saved in the fire of hell. So technically Iman means to believe in Allah, to believe in the books, to believe in the messengers, to believe in life after death, and also to believe in taqdeer, to believe in fate, to believe that anything good which happens and anything evil or bad happens, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there are 3 components which makes up Iman. The first component of Iman or belief is tasdeeq bil qalb, which means to have the belief in your heart, to have the verification in your heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, and to believe that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a messenger, to believe in the Quran, to believe in life after death. That's the first thing of Iman, to believe in the heart. The second thing, the second point of Iman is Iqrar bil lisan, which means to then manifest that belief on your tongue. So you believe something in your heart, but then to say verbally or to then manifest it on your tongue, that is also an important aspect and an important part of Iman as well. Some people, they just believe, or if you speak to them, in their heart they'll say, yeah, I believe in Prophet ﷺ, or I believe in Islam. But they then have to manifest that Iman and that belief on their tongue by then saying the kalima, by then saying Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. They then have to manifest that on their tongue by saying that we believe in one God and that we believe in Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be Allah's Rasul and to be Allah's messenger. And the third component of Iman is to then, whatever we believe in Allah, whatever apparent belief which we have of Allah, whatever belief which we have of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to then put that into practice. And what I mean by putting into practice is to behave and to act like a true believer. And we're going to look at many hadiths on the next page where it says like al-haya'u shu'batun min al-iman, that haya, modesty, is part of Iman. There are other things which are also considered to be part of Iman and so on. So all these things are there to tell us that after we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what we then have to do, the next step for us, is to then behave and act like a true believer and to act like a true Muslim. Another point to mention here before we look at the hadith is the difference, or if there is any differences between the word Iman and the word Islam. Is there a difference between them two or not? Now, without going into too detail, many muhaddithin, many scholars have said that the word Iman and Islam, they're very similar. And that's why whenever we give talks or whenever we explain, we tend to use the two words together, that he is a believer, he is a mu'min, he is a Muslim. But there is a slight difference or a finer detail between the difference of Iman and Islam. And that is that Iman is something which has got to do with the heart, and Islam is something which has got to do with the apparent actions. So Iman concentrates more on the heart. So believing in Allah, having that firmness or having that belief in your heart that Allah is one, to believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is the meaning of Iman. Whereas Islam has got to do more with the actions and so on. And you see this particular differentiation and this difference in the hadith which you're going to look at and study now. Now the first hadith which we are going to study from Mishkaat al-Masabi, from the section of Iman, from the chapter of Iman, is this hadith which is unanimously known as Hadith Jibra'il. And the reason why this hadith is known as Hadith Jibra'il is because Sayyiduna Jibra'il alayhi salam, in the form of a human being, in the form of a person, came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked certain questions about the deen and about our religion. Now you may be thinking to yourself that why did Sayyiduna Jibreel alayhi salam come in the form of a person to ask questions to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why didn't the Sahabas ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly certain questions about their deen and about their religion? Now the reason why is because there was an ayat which was revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah says, Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu la tas'alu an ashya'a an tubdalakum tasukkum. Which means that, oh, those who believe, do not ask things to your prophets, to your messengers, whereby asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam there may be a danger that that particular thing now becomes farz and obligatory upon you. And our example of this particular ayat, and the reason why this ayat was revealed, was there was a companion in the name of Aqra bin Habis radiallahu anhu. And Aqra bin Habis, what happened was that he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is Hajj obligatory every year, or is it once in a lifetime? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam remained quiet and kept silent. He then asked the same question, that, O Prophet of Allah, is Hajj obligatory every year, or is it once in a lifetime? Again, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kept quiet and silent. Again, he asked the same question the third time, at which point Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if I had said yes, that Hajj is obligatory every single year, then it would have been difficult for you to fulfill that particular obligation and that particular command. So what then happened was that this ayat was revealed, and Allah said to the Sahabas and companions that don't ask questions, futile questions, or any questions where you think that it's futile, and then if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was to answer it, or if an ayat or a verse was revealed, then that thing becomes obligatory and farz upon you, and then it becomes a mission, and then it becomes really, really hard and difficult for you to act upon. So what happened thereafter was that the Sahabas were very, very cautious and reluctant in asking questions to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the danger that they may think that it's actually futile, and then because of that reason Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may reveal a verse where that thing becomes obligatory or farz. So they were always wishing and hoping that a Bedouin, say for example from the villages, would come, or someone strange like a stranger from outside may come and ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam certain questions. Now the hadith explains, narrated by Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radhiyallahu anhu, that the companions and the Sahabas, they were once sitting around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when all of a sudden a man appears. And the qualities of this man is mentioned here: Shadidu bayadi thiyab, Shadidu sawadi sha'r, which means that he was wearing striking white clothes, and his hair was also strikingly black as well. In other words, as the hadith explains thereafter, La yura alayhi atharu safar, that there wasn't any signs of journey or traveling on this individual. Now what I mean by that is, if say for example, if somebody was traveling from one place to another, if you're wearing a white jubbah, remember in those days they didn't have cars, or they didn't have like aeroplanes and so on, used to travel by foot. So if you're going from one place to another, the likelihood would be that your white jubbah or your white clothes would go dirty, will become dark, will become brown because of the dirt and so on. Similarly, your hairs will also become disheveled, will become dirty from traveling from one place to another. But this person came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but there was no speck of safar or journey on him. Like his clothes was nicely white, strikingly white. There was no speck of dirt on his clothes. Similarly, his hair was all combed. He looked so beautiful. There was no his hair wasn't in a mess, it wasn't disheveled or anything like that. He comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The next part of the hadith says, وَلَا يَعْرِفُهُ مِنَّا أَحَدٌ, no one from amongst us recognized him. So he was a stranger, all from nowhere. No one ever seen him before. He wasn't like a sahabi or someone who we met, say, in the market. A total stranger came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The hadith then goes on to say that he then sat with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He put his thighs near Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's thighs, and he then placed his hands on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's thighs, and he then started asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam certain questions about the deen and about the religion. Now the first question he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, "Akhbirni anil Islam." that can you inform me or tell me about Islam? That what is Islam? What is the definition of Islam? What does Islam mean? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied by saying, Islam means an tashhada Allah ilaha illallah, that you testify that there is no God besides Allah, wa anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, and that Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Allah's Rasul and Allah's Messenger. Also, wa tuqima salah, observe namaz, observe salah, wa tu'ti zakah, to give zakat, wa tasuma Ramadan, to fast in the month of Ramadan, wa tahujj al-bayt in istata'ta ilayhi sabila, and to do hajj of the Baytullah. Now if you remember what I explained earlier, the difference between Islam and Iman. So what we can gather from this hadith is that Islam has got to do more with your external actions. It's got to do more with, say, prayers, namaz, fasting, giving zakat, going for hajj and so on. It's got to do more with verbally saying on your tongue to believe in Allah and to believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is the meaning of Islam, which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave to this particular person. Now, one or two words to mention from this particular line here. The word wa tuqima salah. Now the word tuqima, it comes from the root word iqamat, which means to establish. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't use the words wa tu'addi salah, to perform salah. He used the words to establish salah. And what we mean by establishing salah here is not just to like pray the namaz, not just to pray the salah, just like say the Allahu Akbar, go into ruku, go into sajda, to do the sitting position and just quickly finish off the prayer within 2 or 3 minutes. No. The meaning of establishing the salah is to pray salah with khushu, with concentration. As mentioned in another hadith which we'll look at in Kitab al-Salah, where a person, he was praying salah very, very quickly. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him that go and do wudu, come back and pray your salah. Why? Because you haven't prayed your salah correctly. So what we can gather is that the meaning of salah isn't just to like pray the namaz, pray the 4 rakats, pray the 2 rakats or the 3 rakats maghrib just in a blink of an eye. But the meaning of establishing the salah is to pray the salah in such a way with concentration, with khushu, with devotion, that you're only praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that was the first part of the question by Sayyiduna Jibreel alayhi salam to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that what is Islam, and the definition given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next question which Sayyiduna Jibreel alayhi salam posed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنِ الْإِيمَانِ, that inform me, tell me about Iman. What is the definition of Iman? What does Iman mean? Upon which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam described or replied by saying, "An tu'mina billah." That Iman means to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa malaikatihi, to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's angels. Wa kutubihi, to believe in His books. Wa rusulihi, to believe in His messengers. Wal yawmil akhir, and to believe in the last day. And also وَتُؤْمِنَ بِالْقَدْرِ خَيْرِهِ وَشَرِّهِ, and to believe in taqdeer, to believe in fate, the good and the bad. So that's what Iman is in a technical point of view, as I already explained, that it's got to do more with the inner beliefs, our interior belief, to make sure that our belief is such that we believe in the oneness of Allah, we believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we believe in all the messengers, not just Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but all the messengers who were sent before, Isa alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Nuh alayhi salam. We believe in every single one of them. We believe in resurrection, we believe in life after death, and we believe in taqdeer, we believe in fate. All these things are all components and are all parts and sections of Iman which we need to adhere to and which we need to believe in. So 2 questions thus far posed by Jibreel alayhi salam. Firstly, the definition of Islam which was given, and the definition of Iman which was given by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The third question which Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam poses to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنِ الْإِحْسَانِ, that inform me and tell me and explain to me about the definition of ihsan. Now what does ihsan mean? Now without going into too detail, ihsan means to have the concentration and the devotion of that ibadat and of that worship. So when you are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then to have that devotion and concentration that you are only worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in Arabic we call this ikhlas and sincerity. That whatever ibadat or worship you do, you're only doing it for the pleasure and for the sake of Allah, and you're not doing it for anyone else and for anybody else. Now the opposite of ikhlas, the opposite of sincerity, is called riya, show off. And as mentioned in the hadith, riya and doing things for other people, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has classified it as shirk khafi, a hidden shirk. It's mentioned in the hadith of Musnad Ahmad, narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri anhu, that once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the Sahabas and the companions, "Shall I not tell you something which I fear more, even more than the fitna of the Masihud Dajjal?" I.e., Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is asking this or telling the Sahabas that there is something which I fear, a disease or a fitna, which I fear more than the fitna and the mischief of Masihud Dajjal. So the Sahabas asked that, "O Prophet of Allah, Messenger of Allah, tell us, inform us, tell us what is that fitna which you fear more than Masihud Dajjal?" Upon which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the fitna which I fear more in my people is a person, he's in worship and then he improves that worship. Why? Because people are watching him and people are seeing him. That person is in namaz, a person is praying salah, and then he realizes either from the corner of his eye that somebody is watching him, somebody is looking at him. So what does he do? He then increases the khushu of his namaz. He then increases the beauty of his recitation, not for the sake of Allah, but he's doing it for the sake of that individual who's looking at him. So the hadith explains that that is the thing or the fitna or the disease which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam feared in us more, even more than the fitna of Masihud Dajjal upon us. So this is something which is very, very important, that whenever we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to have the full devotion there, and more importantly, we have to make sure that whatever ibadat and worship which we are doing, we are only doing it for the sake of Allah and we're not doing it for anybody else. Because remember, many people think that shirk or ascribing partners is, shirk means, oh, as long as I believe in Allah and I don't ascribe partners with Allah, I don't like have another god or another idol in my house or in my room, that's okay, I'll be saved. No. There's many categories of shirk. And this is one form of shirk, shirk fil ibadah, where you're worshipping Allah, but also at the same time you're worshipping somebody else as well. And when we look at the pagans of Makkah, the mushrikeens of Makkah, we find that they also believed in Allah as well. When we look through the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that if we were to ask the pagans of Makkah that who created the world, who created this, who created the heavens, who created the earth, فَسَيَقُولُونَ اللَّهِ, they would all say that Allah created it. But the reason why we don't consider them to be Muslims or believers is because along with believing in Allah, they also would believe in the idols. They would also pray and worship these idols as well. So that's why they are considered to be mushrik and ascribing partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is something which is very important to rectify our intentions, and that whenever we're worshipping, whenever we do any ibadat and so on, we're doing it solely for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because as mentioned in the hadith of Sahih Muslim, that if we did any form of worship for someone other than Allah, then in the hereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell that person that don't come to me for the reward of your namaz. Don't come to me for the reward of your sadaqah or your charity. Don't come to me for the reward of your fasting and your sawm, but instead go to such and such a person. Go to Abdullah, go to Abdul Rahman, the person who you prayed your namaz for, the person who you fasted for, the person who you gave your zakat and sadaqah for. Go to that person and see whether he can reward you, whether he can give you any sawab or any kind of reward. So that's the third question which Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that what is the definition of ihsan, what is the definition of ikhlas and sincerity, upon which the answer Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave was sincerity or devotion in ibadat and in salah and in namaz is that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ka'annaka tara, in such a way that you are or you can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should pray your namaz in such a way, your khushu should be done in such a way that you should imagine, or you're imagining that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in front of you. And then he goes on to say, فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ, which means that if you cannot imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in front of you, then pray your namaz, pray your ibadat, do your worship in such a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you and is looking over you and is seeing you. So these were the three questions posed by Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam thus far. Very quickly, the fourth question which Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنِ السَّاعَةِ, that inform me, tell me when is Qiyamah, when is the day of judgment. So the simple answer Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave was مَا الْمَسْئُولُ عَنْهَا بِأَعْلَمَ مِنَ السَّائِلِ, which means that the person who you're asking does not know when is Qiyamah more than the questioner. In other words, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I don't know when Qiyamah is, the same way you don't know when Day of Judgment is, when Qiyamah is. I also don't know when Day of Judgment and when Qiyamah is. Because as we all believe and as we all know, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows when Qiyamah is. Inna Allah indahu ilmu sa'a, that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the exact time of Day of Judgment and when it will happen. Thereafter, Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the fifth question, فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنْ أَمَارَاتِهَا, that amaratiha, tell me or inform me the signs of Day of Judgment. Okay, that you don't know when Day of Judgment is going to exactly take place, but at least tell us or inform us that what will be the signs and the things which will take place before Day of Judgment. So upon which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam two signs. Number one, an talid al amatu rabbataha, which means that a slave girl will give birth to her master. Now what does that mean, slave girl giving birth to a master? Muhaddiseen scholars have interpreted or have given various interpretation of this particular part. One interpretation they've given is that this is referring to disrespecting the parents, which is, as you can see, uququl walidain, something which is very, very common. And another definition which some muhaddiseens and some scholars have given is that a time will come where there will be so many slave girls, and slave girls will be giving birth to children, and because of ignorance in their lineage, because what would happen is that slave girls would give birth to the child, then after a while the child and the mother will kind of separate from each other. The mother will be, say for example, serving this particular master, the child will go and serve another master, and then they will lose contact and touch with each other. And then what would happen is that that particular child, say for example, may get freed. He will then, say for example, work, become rich, become very, very wealthy, and he will then buy a slave girl. And he will realize that the slave girl which he has bought is in fact his mother. So that's what this hadith is referring to, and talid al-amatu rabbataha, that a slave girl would actually be giving birth to eventually someone who would become her master. So that's like an interpretation which some muhaddisins have given to this particular hadith here. And another minor sign of Day of Judgment which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned here is وَأَن تَرَى الْحُفَاةَ الْعُرَاةَ آلَةَ الرِّئَاءَ الشَّاءِ يَتَطَاوَلُونَ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ, which means that you will see people hufata, i.e. barefooted, urata, which means naked, and al-alata means poor. Ri'a ash-shah, which means shepherds. In other words, you will see people, poor people, or when you look at their family background and their history, you know, their fathers, their forefathers and so on, they were all really, really poor people. But what happened was that, like is the case nowadays, they'll come to UK, they'll come to England, they'll earn a bit of money, then they'll make a mansion or a big house in Bangladesh, and then they'll start boasting to people that, oh, look at my house, look at my mansion. And not only that, يَتَطَاوَلُونَ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ, that they will be competing with others. So they'll make one floor of a mansion, then somebody else then makes 2 floors of his house or his mansion, then this person then will make a 3rd floor, a 2nd floor, a 3rd floor, then that person will make a 5th floor, and then he'll make a 6th floor and so on, and they'll be competing with each other. But when you look at their existence or their wujud or their kind of family background, you'll see that their fathers, their forefathers, they were like shepherds, they were like beggars on the street. But somehow through student visa or this visa or that visa, they managed to come to this country and they kind of earn some money. They go back home, they build these big houses, big mansions, and they start boasting with each other. So this is a sign of Day of Judgment. And to tell the truth, these 2 things which I mentioned, these hadiths should actually put more certainty in our Iman and the truthfulness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That 1400 years ago, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam predicted these things, and we're seeing these things with our own eyes. And these are not the only 2 minor signs Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned. There are many more other minor signs which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, which we can see with our own eyes. Things such as uququl walidain, disrespecting parents. Another minor sign of Day of Judgment will be ignorance will be at its all-time high. Jahalat, people not bothered about religion, people not bothered to know about the Quran, learn about the Quran or the Sunnah. The haram they're living in, they just think, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll just continue with the haram way which I'm living in. They give their wives talaqs and divorce, and they kind of live as normal, that, oh, it doesn't matter. Little they realize that the relationship they're in is a haram and an unlawful relationship. There'll be other things such as zina and adultery will be at its peak as well. And we see this now, zina, adultery, men cheating on women, husbands cheating on their wives cheating on their husbands, zina, all forms of zina, not just zina with the private parts, but zina with the eyes. We're always seeing unlawful women when we're on the streets. There's always women there, we're looking at them, we're seeing them. Zina in terms of the ears, listening to illicit talks, listening to illicit relationships. Zina of the tongue in terms of talking to a strange woman in an illicit way, in an unlawful way. All these things will be at the peak before Day of Judgment, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam predicted that over 1400 years ago, and we're seeing all these things here. So all these things are minor signs of Day of Judgment which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned and has predicted, and we're seeing this. Going back to the hadith here, he mentioned 2 signs to Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam. Then afterwards the hadith finishes off by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying to Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu, to the narrator of the hadith, that Ya Umar, atadri man is-sa'il, that, oh Umar, do you know who this person is? This person wearing nice striking white clothes, nice good looking hair, coming and asking these questions about Iman, Islam, about Day of Judgment, about sincerity in actions and in ibadat. Do you know who this person is? Upon which Sayyidina Umar radhiyallahu anhu said, Allah wa rasuluhu a'lam. Qala, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied by saying, فَإِنَّهُ جِبْرَائِيل أَتَاكُمْ يُعَلِّمُكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. that this person who came was Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, and he came to teach you. Because remember, as I told you the hadith earlier, that the Sahabas were a bit hesitant sometimes to ask certain questions about Islam and about the religion. But obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted their dua, and then Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam came and he asked these questions about sincerity, about Iman, about Islam, about Day Judgment, and in a very beautiful way he asked these questions. And also Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a very beautiful, simple way, without going into too detail in a 50-minute, 1-hour lecture, in a very simple way, answered the questions to Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam and also to the Sahabas and the people who were around. So the last part of the hadith, that this is Jibreel alayhi salam ataakum, who came to you, yu'allimukum deenakum, to teach you your religion and your deen. So may Allah give us the tawfiq to act on what's been said. Wa akhiru da'wan, alhamdulillah.